Sustainable Brain. I am Kristi Villanueva, president of the West San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. And of course, as always, joining me, the beautiful Dr. Sunita Punjabi. Hello, Sunita.
Hello, Kristi. So great to be here again.
Aren't you loving the music? We're trying something new, and in those intro slides, having some uplifting music.
I thought that was really fun. There's construction going on next door, so I have to include that. Hopefully the drill doesn't turn back on.
We'll just say that that's just accent music, going on. That could be a metaphor in our lives, that drill just constantly pounding away.
Yes, it is. It actually is.
Well, I am so excited. We are here Thursday. The week's almost over. Not necessarily for us, but for most people, the week is almost over, and more interesting things in the news and all sorts of things happening. But I'm so excited to have our special guest today, Barry Bailey. And he's with a business owner for Sustainable Blue Dot. I thought that was such an interesting a name for a business. And we're going to talk about sustainable strategies for business leadership. He has some great insights on sustainability, and he yet again helps us bust the myth that sustainability is not always related to the environment. It is related to our day-to-day lives and what we do. Hey, Barry, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate this.
No, absolutely. We're excited to hear from you and excited to hear more about what you have to say and your perspectives. You and I have already done some work together previously. And I know that with your partner, we've talked about many different things related to sustainability and how as leaders, we have such a great responsibility. Tell us a little bit, give us the overview, please.
Well, with Sustainable Blue Dot, it came to fruition kind of, I'd say by happenstance or maybe by accident. Dr. Keith Muhlstein used to work for me. I was in the education space and ran a college. And later on, we were catching up for lunch, this is what I call PC, which is pre-COVID. And then he contacted me and we started talking with, trying to make some type of a new normal. We were talking about, now more than ever, we're looking at sustainability and we're looking how do business owners thrive and survive in this new environment that we're in. And we kind of came up with 3 pillars. And like I said, we were just sitting around talking. And we looked at it from, I'm a educator and business guy, formal trainings, master's in business administration. So, looking at that perspective, and he's a scientist and geologist. And so we came up with 3 things: business, society, and environment. So those 3 pieces, business, society, and environment, they have to come together. It's like the old adage, people say, well, is I don't want to get political, but is the world getting hotter? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm on the side that it is, but my thing is if we go forth and clean up the planet, we go forth and make it beautiful, we've got a great, clean planet to live in. Yes. And if we're wrong, we still have a great, beautiful planet. But if we don't do anything and climate change, we've lost time and maybe we lose the planet. So business, society, and environment have to try exist.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And even if you don't believe in climate change, we always have to admit that there's something going on.
Something's happening.
Yes. And we need to act. So, Dr. Sunita, I wanted to bring you in because Barry has some great insight on different leaders and his impact on different businesses and how you systematically work through businesses of all industries and try and kind of bring things together. Let's examine what our practices are. So we know, you and I know how difficult that is sometimes to streamline practices and let go of certain things.
And so I wanted to ask Mr. Bailey, so may I call you Barry?
Absolutely, please do.
Excellent. So Barry, where do you pull from when you have to make that next decision?
That's a great question, Dr. Sunita. I think when I look at a tough decision, it takes me back to that book I read. One of the books I read in college, maybe you read two books in college, but one of them was Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. And one of the things that came about was he said, you can take everything from me, everything, clothes, dignity, whatever. But there's one thing you can't take from me, and that's my ability to respond instead of react. So I've tried to my whole career, you know, try to respond when I can. I'm not always successful at that, but that's one of my driving factors. And I also look at it from experiential. If I have the time to respond, how do you properly respond to something? Well, education, experiential, as well as the gut. And, I try to minimize the gut, but sometimes it's there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so when you interact with the different business owners, is there kind of a top three that you normally get kind of hitting a wall right off the bat?
Well, I think it goes back to productivity. People are in business, to make money. You want to maximize profits. If you're working for a corporation, you maximize shareholder value. All those things are valid. They have to be there. Uh, how do you balance that? As a business owner, I was talking to a gentleman. This was about 6, 8 months ago. It was PC pre-COVID. Uh,
Hmm.
but he was like, my job is to maximize the profits. And, we got into a whole regulatory issue. And he said, but if I'm not maximizing profits, if I'm trying to consider these other things, some of my shareholders are not going to be happy.
Hmm.
So that's why I kind of reaffirms the need for there has to be some kind of regulations. Number one, it's the right thing to do from our planet and from our clean air, clean water quality, as well as
Emails.
sometimes it's just giving a leader a reason to be able to maybe step back on the profitability just a little bit and bring in that corporate responsibility.
Okay. So as we talk about that corporate responsibility, that immediately brings to mind that there's so many different personalities, Barry. I mean, so many strong, very atypical, just we're going to do it this way. And you know what? And while I know that recycling is kind of on the bottom of the list when we're talking about sustainability, but just as an example, um, if that is costing me more than the benefit, well, that CEO or that chairperson or that board of directors is going to say, no, we're scrapping that across the entire corporation. And it's heartbreaking because we know as individuals what an impact that is. And that then impacts employee morale across the board.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why when you look back and say, if you had regulations for nothing more than allowing that business owner to make the right choice from a sustainability perspective.
You know,
Wow.
Barry, you said a lot of things that are really powerful, and I don't want to like just step over them. When you talk about you wanted to make sure that you were responding rather than reacting, and you went on to say, minimize my gut, the gut. Can you explain a little bit more about that? Because I know what you mean, especially tied into Dr. Viktor Frankl's work on choice, right?
Right, exactly.
Versus reaction, right? So could you explain a little bit more to us about what you mean by that?
Well, it's difficult. When I think of the gut, I think of the reactionary response to something. You're looking at a political issue. You're looking at a socioeconomic issue. You're looking at these various inputs that we're faced at, and a lot of times it's, am I going to respond or am I going to react If I'm driving down the road and a cliff comes along, I think of Thelma and Louise. I'm going to react and turn because I don't want to go over the cliff. There's sometimes you just got to react. If somebody bombs us, well, maybe we should respond instead of reacting. But let's take it down to a lower level. We've all got. Was it Thomas Jefferson talked about the rose-colored glasses? We have filters that we go through. Some of those filters are good, and some of them maybe are hindering us. It could be religion. It could be familiar, family. It could be the way I was reared as a young child. Well, gee, we've always voted this way, so I got to continue voting this way, or I've got to. This is my response. And so what I've tried to do over the years, sometimes successful, is my gut says to do X. Sometimes that's right. Sometimes it's like feelings come and feelings go. Feelings come and feelings go, and feelings can be deceiving. So what do you believe? Do you believe something that's, a science, a fact base, or do you believe something that's, gee, it's just the way I feel or the way I was reared? Does that make sense?
Yes. And Kristi, we had an interview, we talked about just about that. And that reaction is the primal response, right? That's survival based. And we talked a little bit about the base of the brain, which is our animal instinct. But Barry, what I hear you talking about is reacting based on principles or along our values, right? And so then it's a created response, it's a created thing, and it takes a little reflection. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, I think maybe like a measured response in some perspectives, kind of stepping back and saying maybe my ferocity is too strong. Or, my belief system, I've had to question my belief system over and over and over. When I ran a college, I had 6 departments. I had 80 people. It was and it's just because I was the figurehead, does that mean I'm always right? And it doesn't. It's how do you listen? How your first response is, well, gee, maybe as some type of religion that I would maybe adhere to versus sometimes of secular. And, just because I believe one way, everybody has the right to believe their own way. So you have to balance that out. And that's what makes management and that's what makes administration more difficult is, like you said, Dr. Sunita, the personality. You're looking at those things where people are, maybe they have a strong belief system,
Right.
and this goes against their belief system. So at my staff meetings, I used to talk about, we have to step aside and say, is this kind of a litmus test? Is it illegal, immoral, unethical, or against company policy? Those 4 things: illegal, immoral, and sometimes the decisions maybe aren't the ones that I would make if I was an individual, but I have to make them for the collective good instead of a select few.
Okay, so I have to interrupt here, Barry. Now that you have said that, illegal, immoral, against company policy. I
Unethical,
mean,
yeah.
But now we're moving, and I think a lot of CEOs are having some big issues on this because we're now expanding that list. And from what I've heard in some of the feedback with our members is you can be sitting in a meeting and that CEO is so frustrated that he adds to that list and is maybe crossing some lines, some morality and ethical lines. And Dr. Sunita, I have to come to you. What is happening in that CEO's brain? Because to the average employee or to the manager listening to their leader, it sounds like they're going into a panic, and that person that you had all this faith in is now failing you.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
Really significant. And I'm always transparent as a business owner myself. And we're launching some really big things online. Yesterday, I panicked and I was pacing the floor in here. And my Melissa, my right hand on a lot of this, is looking at me. I reacted, she reacted, but what we had, and we've talked about this before, ultimately we had an authentic conversation. And I said, look, we got to work this out. I know you and I are different. And so I shared with her, and we talked about this in one of our earlier interviews, is as a business owner, having that authentic communication with your team and saying, look, I don't have all the answers, but this is why I want to do it. I need to make payroll. I need to make sure enough. So when I shared that with her, all of our tone, both of us came down. I think we're looking at getting buy-in and ownership with our team. We've been talking a lot about workforce engagement also. And so engaging the one of the ways to get your workforce engaged is sharing with them your vision of where you're trying to go, and telling them, I don't know exactly. And COVID is like, I don't think your team or your employees expect you to have all the answers. I think, can you be real about, there you are, we lost you for a minute. Can you be real about, I don't have all the answers, and go from there? What do you think? But yeah, I think that's very important. One of the other things I wanted to talk about too was corporate responsibility. Kristi, I loved that Barry talked about that. And the theory of, it's called shareholder value. You hear that in all the academic literature. Like, is it about shareholder value, or is it about what's best for the community and for the team? And what we're finding is what's best for the community, what's best for the team aligns now more than ever before. Why are people doing business with you when they can do business with 10 other people? Because your values, your company values align with them as an individual, and they see the way you treat your team and you treat your community. So I didn't want to, corporate responsibility, huge thing, Barry, that you said there.
Well, one of the things, playing back to what Kristi and both you, Dr. Sunita, are saying is when you're looking at corporate responsibility, we're learning now that, sometimes it takes 20 years. There's a major corporation, I won't mention them, first initials a G, that things happen, and 20 years later you're realizing it was the wrong thing to do, and it's hurting their businesses. Now 20 years is a long time. The CEO's gone and taken his or her money, and so, but sometimes we have to make that right decision, and kind of goes back to regulatory issues. Having regulations, sometimes you have to do that, but it also gives us a vision, kind of like we're talking about a business in the boardroom, and the CEO is frustrated. Having a vision or having a goal or so forth is powerful, because now it's no longer the CEO barking orders at the employees. The CEO is communicating, here's where we're trying to go. Uh, Everybody, we're all smart in different ways. We've all got different belief systems. But if you believe in the vision, if I can sell a vision, if I'm the CEO, that's where we're heading. And now that's where diversity comes into place. You've got such diverse characteristics that something I lack, my partner has. So, or my employees have. So having that vision, and being able to articulate that vision, communicating it, it's kind of like going into a company where I was with a sales group, and they were struggling with, the engineers were fighting and trying to take over the sale from the salespeople. And the salespeople were arguing that the engineers were undermining them. So we went in and did kind of a take on each other's responsibilities, and all of a sudden their sales flourished because they realized, the engineer, I've got to let the sales guy or person, woman, do what they do best, and that I can provide this and I can support. And they actually had people go back and redo their proposals and redo their pricing, because they each bring strengths, but it's understanding the differences. So often, kind of goes back, Kristi, what you were saying, they don't really understand what the other department or the other employee does.
Yes.
Hence,
Correct.
weekly, monthly educations. And that education can be just as much internal. You can't assume that your finance department understands what sales is doing. You can't assume those things. The better you can do the internal, and sometimes bring in an outside company in like Sustainable Blue Dot or whatever, sometimes that can work because now it's an outside supposedly expert coming in to help with those things. But more often than not, it's the internal struggles and strifes that people are grappling with. And people want to do the right thing. I believe that. People want to do the right thing, but how do I do it?
Exactly. They definitely, sometimes we need to rein everybody in and start to communicate a little bit better, which is what I love about, Sustainable Blue Dot, about your methods and Dr. Muhlstein's, and the fact that you're looking at every component. You're not just looking at certain things. You're really examining and taking things apart to say, this is how things should work better together. And I know that we're all going to have to, that's an initiative that the West Chamber is taking on, is how do we take those CEOs and acknowledge how amazing they are, how amazing they've been for 20, 30 or more years. But today we're going to have to relearn a few things. We're going to have to approach things from a different perspective. We're going to have an even greater level of collaboration. So definitely amazing. And, Barry, this has been such an amazing conversation, but unfortunately we've come to the end of our time. But what I want from you is, this is when you tell us, what's the takeaway? Where do we go from here? We know that we can get a hold of you, but, what do we want to leave this video with?
Well, I think it's really important that we respect differences in everybody. Try to stop spreading the bad news. I think we need to work on reality, which is make sure that when we're writing our script, our personal script of who we are, that we're writing it with credible, knowledgeable, verifiable information and people, because who writes our script matters. And so therefore, when we're looking at scripts, which is actionability, I think that we should do that from the standpoint of, this is what I believe, double checking, am I believing what's right, and moving forward and collaboratively
Absolutely.
speaking and listening. I hope that helps.
Yes, absolutely. And anyone out there can reach out to Barry by going on to sustainablebluedot.com, and we will definitely put your contact information. Dr. Sunita, what is our takeaway for today? Tell us about our brain.
So just Google social entrepreneurship. Look, right now, we're not just rating companies on their profit margins. We are rating companies on purpose. It's called purpose-driven organizations. Look that up. You'll see there's the top companies now. And that's what sustainability, Kristi, and this message just keeps coming back and back and back. When we look at sustainability, it's about having that message, having that cause, passing that down, knowing your why, passing that down through the trenches, getting their why and aligning that. So there's a great book called The Purpose Effect by Dr. Pontefent, if someone's interested in the information. But Barry, thank you so much. Your contribution was really significant and continues to defend what we've been saying, which go out there and find your cause and
Go forth and prosper.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to you both. And thank you to everyone watching out there. You have been watching Sustainable Brain, our weekly episode that I share with Dr. Sunita, the brain coach. You can reach Dr. Sunita at any time at the brain coach. We'll put her information in the chat. She is available for individual counseling and additional support. She's doing some tremendous things in her research. And then obviously Barry Bailey with Sustainable Blue Dot. So if you need any information, please give us a call at the West San Antonio Chamber. We are here for you, for your sustainability, for your longevity with your business. We wish you a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. and make sure to take charge of your future. We'll see you soon.